Welcome back, everyone. We're back again doing another Premier League prediction, this time for the 2019-20 season. Last season, my prediction video ended up being about 40 odd minutes long, so this time I'm going to try to keep it a bit shorter, maybe under 10 minutes, hopefully. Not sure if I'm going to be able to keep it that long, but we'll see. So I'm going to do this in blocks. I'm going to do like 20th to 18th, 17th to 15th, 13th, or 14th to 12th, 11th to 9th, 8th to 6th, and then maybe the top 5 after that. And okay, so let's just get into it. So I'm going to have a little thing here. But as you can see, 18 to 20th, I have Sheffield United, Norwich City, and Brighton and Hove Albion. I think that both Sheffield United and Norwich are just going to go straight back down. They haven't strengthened enough for my liking. For one, Sheffield United, they haven't strengthened all that much, and the only really players they brought in were the likes of I forget your man's name, the troublemaker who used to be at United and stuff. Bloody, I really should have double checked his name before I started this, but regardless, fuck, it's going to annoy me. But and Norwich City won. I believe they won the championship last season, but yeah, they did. But they had a big issue where they were scoring goals, but they were conceding a lot. They had a bit of a shaky defense, and they haven't really rectified it. They've brought in Ralph Farman from Schalke, but some people think it's going to be a good signing, but I don't think it's going to be that great of a signing in consideration of where Schalke finished last season in the Bundesliga. They almost got relegated, and they were willing to send him out on loan, and they're bringing in a younger lad to train in. And like Farman's only about 29, 30, so that could be a pretty bad. That could be like alarms going off in your head saying they're allowing him to go out, and arguably Tim Krul is a pretty decent goalkeeper at times. I know he had a bit of a leaky defense last season, but I think like they conceded a lot, and you need to be very prolific in front of goal. Their kind of tactic was to try to outscore other teams, but you can't really do that in the Premier League, especially when you're coming up. Like unless you're like a Wolves who is stacked to the bloody gills with like a really developed team. Norwich have a really nice squad. It's young players, but I don't think they're prolific in front of goal, or at least as accurate as you want. You'd want them to be scoring at least 50% of their shots in front of goal. I think Aguero has about 50%, if I'm not mistaken. But you'd want to be scoring because they're not going to get as many chances as people might think. I think that's where they're going to go down. Sheffield's going to go down because they're not going to strengthen. And then Brighton Hove Albion. I think they think they're going to be wrecking. They've just been tinkering too long and getting by with not really delivering on all the means. They really haven't addressed the striking issue. I know they have Glenn Murray, who's a really good player for them, but he's just getting older. He's getting slower and slower, and that you need to adapt to the pace of the Premier League. They don't really have any other natural goal scorers, and they haven't really strengthened all that much. And there's the possibility of Lewis Dunk, arguably their best defenders, probably going to leave for 40 odd million, possibly to Leicester, but it's a strange one. I just don't see him staying up, and they have a new manager coming in who's a bit of an unknown. He could do bits for them, but at the same time, I think he's too much of an unknown quantity that he's going to have to take his time to adjust to the pace of the league in comparison to what it's like in the Championship. The Championship is very, it's all about stamina rather than technical ability. It's still like there still is a technical ability to it, but like when you come, like Championship is maybe like a 6 out of 10, and then Premier League is like a 10 out of 10 in terms of the level cap. And I think he's going to have difficulty adjusting to that, and it might be too late before he finally gets the right balance. And I don't think their team is set up to kind of soak up that kind of pressure. So that's why I have them being relegated. Now to get on to 17th to 15th, we have at 17th Burnley, 16th Newcastle, and 15th Aston Villa. I think Burnley are just going to escape the drop this season. They have a relatively decent defense, but I think a major factor for them is that they've statistically never really scored a whole lot of goals, and that's probably going to come back to bite them eventually. I know they had a season 2 seasons ago when they finished 7th or 8th, and they were on top of the world, but they were just beating teams like 1-0, 2-0, or really tight margins. And it's the same last season, but last season they kind of got exposed. And they've recently sold their first choice goalkeeper, Tom Heaton, to Aston Villa, which is a great coup, by the way. They have another backup keeper who ended up playing during the 17-18 season for Burnley and did really well for him. Unfortunately, he picked up an injury last season, or just at the start of the season, and he was out for, I don't know, it was 7 or 8 months. Possibility he could get injured again, and then their backup goalkeeper to rely on is Joe Hart, and everyone knows that if you're playing against Joe Hart, you place your shots bottom left, because Joe Hart statistically can't get down there for whatever goddamn reason. I mean, he might be shorter on one side of the body than the other, but I think they're going to be exposed and they're not going to score enough goals to stay up, or just barely stay up, but they'll just be defensively stable enough. And I think in January someone might come in for Tarkowski or Ben Mee and just strip that back line, and then they'll be truly and royally screwed. In 16th, I have Newcastle. I know a lot of people are placing Newcastle to get relegated. I do think they'll get relegated next season. I think they'll just manage to stay up by the skin of their teeth. They've brought in some players that potentially have a bit of class about them. Maxime, I can't remember his last name, from Nice. Joelinton from Hoffenheim, and I can't remember the man's first name. Willems from Eintracht Frankfurt. There possibility of another couple players coming in. But yeah, their team looks quite good. I think they're also in pursuit of either maybe Danny Welbeck or Andy Carroll, someone to come in and possibly just deliver maybe a handful of goals. Even getting 10 for where they are in the league would be actually really big for them. But I think they'll be okay, but I think they'll get relegated next season. I think they're going to have a bit of an Everton / West Ham kind of job after Big Sam left West Ham when I can't remember the coach's name. The guy who had Payet in, and they finished 5th or 6th in the league, where basically that defensive stability that was from the previous manager might be instilled for another season or two. And once they come in, the new manager might instill a bit of an attacking philosophy, and they'll have that base defensive structure, and they'll be able to attack teams and kind of create some out of it. I think that's kind of what Rafa Benitez instilled in this Newcastle team. I think they'll be able to survive one season, but after that, I would be tipping them for getting relegated the following season, especially if they manage to stay up. I imagine then Joelinton and some of the newer signings might get stripped away, especially in January or at the end of the season. Then we have Aston Villa. Aston Villa have been performing really well. They've spent a lot of money, but at the same time, they've been making some of the players that they had on loan last season permanent signings, so it's kind of bounced out that way. And they've made some key signings, likes of that Wesley guy from, I believe it was Anderlecht, or one of the other, or Club Brugge. Can't remember which Belgian team it was. But he came in, he's got a pretty good record. Brought in the likes of Tom Heaton. He's a really good goalkeeper at this level. They'll be able to trust him. I believe that means they're getting rid of, or the goalkeeper they had last season, who was their second choice, who was never really trusted by the manager, and then they brought someone in. They brought Heaton in, so he's probably lost his space, but he's still a really good keeper, so they have a good depth there. They probably need one or two more centre backs, and then I'd say they'd be sorted. But I think they have enough balance throughout their team that they can survive in the Prem for at least one season and possibly develop on to come back into maybe a mid-table side. And then from 14th to 12th, we have Southampton, Crystal Palace, and Bournemouth. Southampton, I think Hasenhüttl might eventually kind of develop that squad a bit more. He still probably needs a signing or two. I'm not sure if how many they've made as of yet. I haven't really been looking at them, but they're making good progress last season, so I think that'll develop further. I think it'll still be tight. They might be like 5 or 6 points off the drop, but good enough to keep them away from it. Crystal Palace in 13th. They've lost Aaron Wan-Bissaka and possibly going to lose Wilfried Zaha, arguably their two best players. And if they sell Zaha, they haven't really replaced Wan-Bissaka, but they might just want to pull in all that money and maybe reinvest it at the end of next season, or see if they can get by with some other young players and try to bleed them into the squad. I think they finished 10th or 11th last season, so they're actually pretty decent. But I think they're eventually going to fall away. But Hodgins is a fairly defensive manager, so I think he'll keep them relatively steady. Then in 12th, we have Bournemouth. Bournemouth have made some good signings. I don't think they've made enough quality signings. Eddie Howe kind of tends to stick with the unknown English quantities when he could risk his arm and try going out for someone a little more unknown, possibly with better stats in a different league. But to be fair to him, his his transfer dealings have usually always worked out, bar maybe one or two exceptions. Gradle, for example, he was an injury-prone asset, but yeah, everyone seems to deliver relatively well. Could be interesting if Leicester end up buying Nathan Ake for 75 million, but I doubt that transfer will go through. But I think they'll finish 12th. They'll probably finish comfortably mid-table. They're a bit of a weird side that they can beat someone on their day, but they can lose just as easily. I think they need to develop that a bit more. If they can eventually kind of stabilize against some of the smaller teams, they'll do really well and maybe just only lose to the big teams, and it should be all right. It's just they tend to have that kind of weird glass cannon esque to them, where like they can beat anyone on their day, but if they're off it for a bit, they get battered. So, and now let's get on from 11th to 9th. At 11th, I have Watford. Watford tend to be a fairly statistically very decent side. I think they made enough key signings this season. They've made likes of is it Craig Dawson? Yeah, Craig Dawson. He's a really good aerial threat in the box for corners. They have a fairly big unit of a team, so I think he's an ideal signing. They could go 3 at the back, maybe have Dawson in the middle, or go for 2. But their team is very well set up. They probably could do it maybe with another striker just to bring in, because I find Gray isn't really delivering for them, and I forget the other lad, the captain. He's been doing good, but he's kind of off the pace a bit. He is getting up there in age, so we want to look out for. You never know, they could have a blistering season and finish in like up to like 7th or 8th, but unlikely. But I think 11th is a good spot for him. It'd be interesting if is it Garcia ends up staying for another season, because I think he's been the longest manager in like 4 or 5 seasons, so it'll be impressive. In 10th, I have West Ham. West Ham have strengthened fairly decently with the likes of Pablo Fornals, is it Haller? I can't remember his first name. And they got some of the Deadwood in their squad, but I think with the likes of Haller, Fornals, they're going to create some quality chances, and especially keeping hold of Felipe Anderson, which was a coup and a half. I was expecting him to go to one of the bigger teams, but he's sticking around, and I think they'll just develop further. They didn't start great last season, but I think Pellegrini's kind of figured out the kinks in everything that the squad has, and he'll be able to develop on it further. They could possibly finish really high. It might be close from 10th to 6th, but I think they'll finish up there, so it's going to be interesting. In 9th place, I have Leicester. Possibly they could finish a bit lower now after losing Slaphead. I forget his real name. Brain's gone dead again. Harry Maguire. They could finish lower, but I think they'll be relatively successful. Especially they've kept a lot of the key players that they want to keep. Maddison, Vardy. Well, I know Vardy's a bit older now, but their kind of core midfield unit, Ndidi and the likes of them. Then their backline, Pereira, Chilwell. I can't remember. I think they have Benkovic still. I'm not sure if he's gone back out to Celtic as of yet. But yeah, he looks like they're going to be a decent squad. And also, it's going to be impressive if Vardy can keep the same level of form as he did when Rodgers came in. Because up until Rodgers came in, he scored something like 7 or 8 goals over the course of about 20-something games. I think 27, 28. And then Rodgers came in, and he basically got the best out of Vardy. And I think he scored something like 9 goals in 10 or 11 games. And if he can get that kind of goal-scoring form out of him again, possibly his last couple of seasons, although he could go to like 36, you never know. He's about 32, 33 now. So he's getting up there in years, but he's definitely still consistent enough to keep it going. I think they'll finish 9th, but I have a feeling that Rodgers has fucked up big time. He's after releasing the scouting team, or like the head scout analyst in Leicester City, to basically bring in his own people. I think is a terrible idea. I would have kept the scouting team in place, because they found some top quality players in Ndidi, Kante, Mahrez, Vardy as an example. But yeah, and Brendan Rodgers does not have an exact amazing track record with signings. What's his name? Markovic, the striker from Southampton. I forget him. The big blocky target man who was crap. He's had some duds over the years, so I'd be a bit hesitant to allow him to do transfers. I would just basically say I want these kind of players, and then the scouting team will go find players that kind of match that style of play that he wants. That's what I would say to them. I wouldn't get rid of him, and fortunately he has. So it's a bit of an interesting dilemma. So I think next season they could finish a bit lower, especially if they get picked apart, and especially if Rodgers gets to have the pick of the choice of the players he wants to bring in when he's not known for his choices realistically. Now then, we're up to 8th to 6th. 8th, I have Everton. I think they're going to have a good season. They're after securing the signing of Moise Kean. He's going to be a decent striker. I think it's going to take him probably maybe 10-15 games before he hits the ground running, but he has an unbelievable track record. I think he's played something like 11 games in Serie A, but like only like maybe 20-30 minutes per game. And he came on and he gets a goal pretty much every single game. I think he has a goal rate of like 1.2 or 1.3 goals per game. He has only played very limited minutes and in a very good squad, so it's hard to tell. But he has the physicality for the league. I think it's just going to take him time to adjust to the pace of it. But once he hits the ground running, he's probably just going to be a house lit up like a house on fire. And he seems the right kind of striker for I forget the coach's name. Whatever, the Everton coach, but I think with linking up with Sigurdsson, Richarlison, I'm not sure if Walcott still starts for them. I doubt it. But having players in and around that are really pacey, that can lay balls in along the ground to a poacher, target man-esque player like Moise Kean, and the fact that they got him for so cheap, was it like 27.5 million or something, with no buyback clause, which is crazy for them. I would expect it to maybe get him for like 20 and then with a buyback, but seems good. The only questionable decision was maybe selling Idrissa Gana Gueye and Lookman to Leipzig. That selling Lookman was a strange one. I thought they would have kept a hold of him because he was a quality player. I can kind of understand getting rid of Gueye because they got such a good offer, but I would have probably, if I was going to sell him, I would have gone for like maybe 40-50 million. I'm not sure how much was left on his contract, but he seemed like probably the cog in their midfield team. They brought in Delph, so he could be a kind of an esque replacement for him. I don't think he's at the same level as Gueye, but you never know. In 7th place, I have Chelsea. I've Chelsea 7th because I think there's going to be a bit of a transitional period for them. They essentially don't really have a first choice striker. They have Tammy Abraham, Batshuayi. Batshuayi would be a good shout for them to start every game. He's a fairly prolific striker, but I have a feeling that Lampard's going to look him over and go for Tammy. Tammy's pretty pacey. He seems like the a similar player to Marcus Rashford, but maybe doesn't have the same kind of composure. He's had one season in the Premier League with Swansea, and he seemed to do relatively well. He's played well in the Championship with, I know he was with Aston Villa last season, and he was with some other, I think wasn't Birmingham, maybe Brentford, a couple of seasons ago, and he played pretty well there. I believe he got 19 that season. So you never know, he could come on like a house on fire, but I have a feeling that he's just going to be kind of wasteful in front of goal. He's very pacey, and he seems like a Danny Welbeck-esque. He has all that pace, but no end product. But it's like in the Championship, you have a lot more chances, and I don't think you'll get as much in the Premier League. They're going to have a lot of difficulty, especially losing Hazard, because Hazard contributed, I think it was something like 50% of their goals last season, either through goals or assists or the link-up play he created. So it's going to be very interesting how they kind of circumvent that. They brought in Pulisic in January, and they sent it back on loan, but he's back now. But I don't think he's a good player, but I don't think he's the kind of player they need. He's more of a creative winger, central attacking midfielder, and they have so many of them, but I don't think it's going to work out. I think there's going to be a bit of a lull period for them. I think the center backs are a bit dated. Goalkeeper is okay. Right, fullbacks are okay. Midfield, center defensive midfield is really good, but like they have some amount of dart midfielders. I don't understand the signing of Kovacic all that much. He's a bit of a box to box midfielder, but I don't really rate him. He was good when he was at Inter, but I think he's fallen off the pace so much since then that I don't know. I think they're just going to have a bit of a adjustment period to how they want to go, and it could be close. They could maybe get into the top, maybe 5th, but I see them 7th. I see too many issues with that squad. In 6th, I have Wolverhampton Wanderers. Possibly they really should be in 7th or 8th because they're going to have the challenge of being in the Europa League this season, and statistically, everyone tends to perform a little bit less in the league when they're not in European qualifying games or European games. But I don't know. This Wolves squad always surprises people, so I think I think they have the energy to keep going. They picked up Doherty. He's picked up I'm not sure how long of an injury, but he's injured for a decent bit of time. I think it's only maybe a couple months, but still, that could be a big hinder to them. But they have so much depth that it's not really a massive issue for them. They have like players that can play in every position. The only place is they're kind of light striker, but even then they brought in Cutrone from AC Milan, which is a signing and a half, by the way. Was he like 18 or 19? And he seems like he has a ceiling above him. But even at that, they could even play Cutrone in Europa League and play, what's his name, Rodriguez, or the Mexican striker up top, and maybe Jota, Cam, or as a two-man striker partnership. But yeah, I think they'll surprise people and somehow get sixth. I have a weird sneaking suspicion about them. And then in fifth, we have Arsenal. I think Arsenal will do relatively well. I think they're going to be a very goal-heavy kind of team this season. That they'll be the kind of team that's like they'll leak goals for all intents and purposes, but their solution to it will be to outscore you, which is the Jurgen Klopp method of back against when Liverpool before they kind of brought in Van Dijk to stabilize them. But yeah, because they have a very attacking front three now with likes of Lacazette, Aubameyang, and now Pepe. Pepe is still a bit of an unknown quantity, but he's been fairly prolific last season, and he had hints of that the season before. Their midfield is a bit of a question mark. They brought in Dani Ceballos, and he seems like he could be that kind of link player to kind of link the midfield to the attack and kind of distribute. They've lost Aaron Ramsey, and they've lost some key players, and possibly this could be the season that Ozil might finally fucking pull his finger out and deliver something. But at the same time, I don't think the midfield is balanced enough to accommodate Ozil in that team. Ozil is I would say hardworking, because he does statistically run the most in their team to an extent, or he has very high numbers, but he doesn't really get that's defensively involved. He always kind of gets his body in the way, but I think you need a bit of a destroyer. They have Torreira, but I think Torreira needs a bit of more of an aggressor. If Torreira is the ball winner, they need a destroyer alongside him just to break up play, or maybe do the Fernandinho role and kind of, if the play's gone against them, just sidestep someone and tackle them to just kind of end possession and just give them back a foul into an off the ball situation. But yeah, and especially their backline is going to be interesting. They still have Scrotum Mustafi, who is a fucking woeful centre back. Socrates, who is liable to get sent off or give away a penalty because he just loves to throw himself into it. He's like a better Phil Jones, but more prone to give away fouls. And then you have Kashani, who seems to have turned against the club completely and wants to leave and go back to France, and more than likely he'll be gone. Looks like they're in for Upamecano, but I have a feeling that Leipzig are going to hold out for big bucks because he's performing fairly well for them. They have the likes of Kolasinac on the left, Bellerin on the right. I'm not sure if Bellerin's back fully fit. I know he had that hamstring injury, or his ACL, back around December, January, so he could be back now, but usually those are about 7 or 8 months. So before they even go through recuperation. But yeah, they could develop into a good squad if maybe they go 3 at the back. Then they could get the full benefit of Kolasinac. He's more of a left wing back rather than an actual left back. But yeah, I think they'll finish 5th. I think they're going to be too leaky, and when they come against the big teams, I think they'll have issues, or teams that will kind of know how to deal with the strikers, or kind of just be able to kind of soak up the pressure and hit them on the counter, or maybe just win the midfield battle, which is where I think Arsenal is going to have their biggest problem this season, because they just don't have the numbers in there. You never know, it could be a great season. According to BT, they're going to have Ozil and Iwobi are going to get 11 assists each. I don't see that coming, but you never know. In 4th, I have Manchester United. I know a lot of people are going to be surprised. They're going to be saying Manchester United should be like 6th or 7th or whatever. But I think they've signed pretty well, and they finally got a fucking decent right fullback. Mr. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who's a signing and a half. His tackle rate is ridiculous. But I think they'll finally make up the find him make up the issues that's been on the right hand side for so long. It kind of balances out the team a bit. So like if Shaw wants to go forward, he'll be able to go forward without having to kind of slot in alongside the left centre back to help defend, because Ashley Young's on the right hand side. He's a disaster waiting to happen. They brought in Harry Maguire, who's a great centre back for all intents and purposes. I think he suits this team very well. He's a natural ball winner and a bit of an aerial threat. Good in set pieces and good for both boxes. Just for a goal scoring midfielder or defender, sorry. I think he'll add to the team completely. And they've also brought in Dan James. Dan James wouldn't be a first team starter, but I think he's going to be a good kind of player to bring off the bench, just with his sheer pace, just to bring on, and especially if you throw him on the right or the left, just get the ball and he sprints at people. Like if you have that kind of player running at you, and seeing some of his highlights from previous games, he's actually quite nimble on the ball and he's good control. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops. He's been a bit iffy on preseason, but other than that, some of his stats looks good. And I think once he kind of gets into the rhythm of the team, they'll be good. They kept a hold of Pogba. McTominay's looking brilliant. They lost Herrera, which is a bit of a loss, but I think the other players around them can pick it up. I think hopefully if they kind of maybe take Matic out of the team, maybe transition McTominay into more of a first team player, possibly try to blend Fred or one of the Pereira into the team, or even try to convert Jesse Lingard into maybe a more defensive player to kind of be that dog role to tackle and just get in everyone's faces. And then they've brought through Marcus Rashford, Greenwood. I forget his first name, but Mason Greenwood. And he seems like a potential signing or a future player and a half. His goal record for under 18s and under 23s is ridiculous. He could be an absolute dynamite player. It'd be interesting to see if he gets game time on the right hand side, maybe just to create a bit of more width. He seems to be the kind of player that can play anywhere across the front three, and he may be behind the striker cam. Definitely going to be an interesting signing, and it looks like they're also kind of trying to convert Pogba into maybe a more of a deep line playmaker of sorts, rather than being like a Mazzala or a wide or a more forward player. But if he plays deeper, he'd be able to kind of do the kind of not Perisic, Pjanic role, where basically they pick the ball from deep and he just kind of plays the balls to everyone out wide and just finds everyone. His level of delivery is ridiculous. And I think this could be the season that Marcus Rashford and Martial finally kick it into high gear and possibly maybe get 10, 15 goals each, maybe or 15 goals plus, which would be absolute dynamite for him. Main thing with Rashford is he needs to stay fit. His pace against anyone, he's fairly prolific in front of goal, especially one-on-one. I would favor him even more so. Martial is probably the best natural finisher in the team. They still have Lukaku floating around. It looks like he could be going, but I doubt at this stage they're going to sell him, especially with how little is left in the window, because you don't want to rely on just theoretically, if you're going to be playing Martial as your left winger, then you technically have maybe two registered strikers in Greenwood and Rashford, and that's a bit risky to do. But yeah, and I'd imagine if they'll have a crazy season if De Gea manages to get out of that rut he was in. If he can, that defense will be an absolute fortress and possibly could be the best defense in the league if they manage to get De Gea back onto his best form, which you never know, could happen this season. I know he had a bit of a blinder last year and wasn't great, but if he pulls it out and finally kind of stabilizes, maybe signs a new contract, United could be a force to reckon with this season. In third, I've Tottenham. Tottenham have strengthened fairly well. I think they'll get third again. They've made some good signings and some good potential future signings with the lad they signed from Leeds. I think his name's Clark or something. He seems like he's going to be a good little player in the future for the right-hand side. Could be a good replacement for Lamela, because Lamela, he's good, but he seems a bit inconsistent. And it looks like they're in talks to bring in Dybala. I don't know. I never really rated him, but he would be a natural improvement on Dele. Dele was really good for the first few seasons, but I think teams kind of figured him out because he tends to play just behind the striker, but I find he's getting forced out to the left or right a bit more, and he's not naturally able to kind of do the overlap he used to do when Kane was fully fit. Because Kane always kind of dropped a bit deeper, if you ever watch some of the games, and he would get on the back end of some corners and he'd be further ahead of him. It was an interesting dynamic they had, but I don't think that'll really happen again, not since they brought in Lucas and Son playing more regularly. they're not going to go that kind of style anymore. And if you're going to play Cam, you're more than likely to play Ericsson if they can somehow keep him. But if they get Dybala in, I think Dybala is a slightly improved version of Dele Alli. Ali is more physical, but I think Dybala just has a little more finesse about him and better goal scoring from range. But yeah, so we have Tottenham in third, and to surprise the fuck out of everyone, I have Manchester City in second. I think they're going to have a burnout this season. I know they look like on top of it and everything, but I have a feeling that they're just going to get burnt out. Don't know what it is. Pep tends to have a bit of a consistently bad third season, or is it fourth? I can't remember now. Oh, fourth. This is his first fourth season, and I think they're going to wear out the team a bit because De Bruyne seems a bit injury prone. They could lose Sané. I wouldn't rely on Jesus for goals. Like, he is a good goal scorer, but he fluffs his lines a fair bit. And Aguero was fairly injury free last season, but I could see him picking up a few knocks. And if they managed, there were some games last season where they threw him away, and I could see that happening again, especially if they fall off the pace. It looks like they're trying to, and the left back seems to be an issue for them again. They seem to rely on Zinchenko, a left back now, rather than rotating Zinchenko and Delph, because Mendy's never bloody fit. And since they don't have they play Laporte as well there, but Laporte seems like the most natural centre back. So I don't know, it's a weird issue or state of status quo they're in with that team. I think they'll have a drop off, and I don't know. I think they've paid too much money for players to come in, and like they're just so expensive that they can't offload them, like Mendy. Like, they'd have to try to recoup their wages or something, but I don't know. I think they're just going to fall off. I think they'll have a burnout, possibly maybe just around December. They'll get burnt out, and the team will just kind of fall into disarray for a bit, maybe for like a month or two, and then eventually get back to form. But in first place, I have Liverpool, and I think Liverpool, as long as they stay injury free and stay consistent as they did last season, which I think they will. They looked really good in form against Man City. Man City just had a better team out. But I don't know. And the keeper just had a bit of a blinder that day. But because Liverpool could have easily won if the ball wasn't cleared off the line. I don't know. But I think they have the potential to win it this season. I would just put my money on it. I don't know. It's a weird one. You think Manchester City would win it again, but I think there's just going to be that burnout, and I think Liverpool will just snake them to the title. Because I think Firmino is liable to stay fit, Mane is liable to stay fit, and I think Salah will stay fit, and the midfield behind them, there's players coming back who are now fit. The only thing that's going to be a bit of a hindrance for them is right back with Alexander-Arnold. As long as he stays fit, and so does the left back, forget his name, Andy Robertson. If they both stay fit, that'll be a key component to them. The only issue they have is they don't have really natural good left backs or backup left backs, because they got rid of Alberto Moreno, and I wouldn't play him as their backup because he's he's more of a winger, and even that he's terrible. And then we have Nathaniel Klein, who's out for like the next 7 to 8 months with the I can't remember if it's hamstring or ACL injury, but like his career is pretty much over. I'd say he's so injury prone as of late. But I'd say if they sign some decent backup right backs and left backs, they'll be pretty set, and they'll be pretty happy with themselves how the team's gone. But yeah, that's my Premier League predicted Premier League. Yeah. Let me know what you guys think. What would be your predicted 11? Leave it comments below to let me know what you think. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.